Hello, everybody, and let me tell you, you're in for a real treat. We're going to ask some questions and talk with Zaysan. We'll discuss his experiences with a family of advanced off-world, non-Earth humans called Plejarens, as well as his earthly mission to end child sex slavery. Zaysan's friend Annie DeRiso and myself, Danielle Brock, will be asking Z the questions we all want to know the answers to. But first, a little background on Zaysan. Zaysan is a Shaolin priest and Tai Chi grandmaster. He has multiple college degrees, co-produced a worldwide television show called UFO AZ, has been employed as a bounty hunter, military contractor, and everything in between, including working at sea. In addition to public speaking events with large audiences, Zaysan has been a part of many humanitarian efforts. As the founder and recipient of awards for his charity, the Quest ECSS, which stands for Ending Child Sex Slavery, Zaysan is known for standing up for those who could not. Z seeks not to know the answer, but to understand the question. Always just a man, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always just a man. The Plejaren Diaries book series, currently in 5 volumes, were all written by Z in less than a year and are available on Amazon.com. These books are Zaysan's true story about his experiences while living with the Plejarens, an advanced society of off-world non-Earth humans. Z says there's so much like us in so many ways. Please note that all proceeds from the sale of his Plejaren Diaries book series go towards Z's earthly mission to end child sex slavery. He has 2 websites you can visit, thequestecss.org and endingchildsexslavery.org. Z can be reached via email at plejarendiaries@protonmail.com. And this video, plus others, are available on Z's YouTube channel, Plejaren Diaries. Please subscribe to Z's channel. Okay, Annie, how about you start us off with some of your questions for Z?
How did this all start, Z? I mean, how did you ever get involved with people from another planet, another civilization? What happened? How did that come about?
It was a victim of circumstance, so to speak. When I started out, I was in contracting, military contracting, and doing that work down in the jungles, and 100 miles from anywhere, and so it's really a remote location. And through all the different training that I do, like my primary work is rescuing children, for the Quest ECSS, or endingchildsexslavery.org. And what we do is we rescue kids that are destined to die, and we do it military style. So I've aligned myself with several other individuals who have a military background. A lot of them have worked for us, that we go in and rescue these children. And all the proceeds from the books that we do goes to the quest in doing rescues. And we're not like a lot of the other ones that you see out there. We do everything from the time we get them, we stay with them until they're out on their own again, which is years later. So, and then we handpick the places that we put them, so we never leave the children. It's about the only way we felt necessary, or it was the only proper way we thought that it could be done. And we're the best in the business, and we've rescued over 2,700 kids. So anyways, with that kind of background, and then doing the work that I was doing down there in the glades, I was out. Sometimes I'd just go for a walk because the place is just amazing to me. I mean, it's a swamp, so a lot of people might be turned off by that, but to me, it's the rawest of nature. And so I really enjoy just getting away from everybody and everything, and just observing what's going on. Anyway, I came across something that didn't fit, and I thought maybe I've been smelling the wrong plants or something, but there's this beautiful girl, and she was kind of hung up in the mangrove trees, it's kind of like the roots are out of the ground, so it comes out like this, and everywhere around it's kind of mucky. So if you cross over on one of those and slip through, your foot gets caught down in what we call the suck. The foot goes deep into the ground and you can get really tangled up. And that's how this lady got in that position. And, but she didn't fit. She's wearing this like a blue uniform jumpsuit sort of thing. She had, she was very beautiful, and it's like, just didn't fit the neighborhood at all. And so it was kind of questionable for me. So essentially what I did was I just approached her like I would in like an animal or something that was hung up like in a fence or something. And I was very cautious. And so long story short, I got her out of the muck and got her back to her ship. And, then sometime later when I was out there again, they appeared and I saw this blue like light, triangular type light come down to the ground. And when I entered, I was on a ship with all these strange beings.
What was your first impression? They don't look like us, do they?
Well, I thought they might be going to eat me. I mean, they look just like us, but they're taller, except for Sam Jess. And it's like that first time that they, abducted me, if you want to use that language or whatever. I found myself on the ship, and there were 6 of them there, and there was 3 females and 3 males, and they're all standing kind of like in a line and, facing me. And the captain was the one speaking, and it didn't look like any of them wanted to make eye contact and didn't really want to have anything to do with me. As I'm scanning each one of them as the captain's talking, I get down to Sam Jess, and she's kind of like this. So I knew that, it's going to be okay. And, we just started a slow process of getting to understand each other and how we did things. And I really found out a lot about them right up to today, how similar they are to us. They're way beyond our technology and everything, but essentially they're like 4,000 years ahead of us.
Did you have a hard time communicating? I mean, you were trained in temples. Did that help you to adjust yourself to different languages, the ways of approaching people, or that had to have been difficult maybe?
When I first came in contact with her and I was trying to communicate, I did little things like how I turned the knife around and set it, where she could grab it and look at it and stuff and understand what it was that I was about to do. And so I kept, saying things, but not in very short phrases and everything. By the time we got back to the ship, she said some words to me that were in English, which I thought was pretty amazing. But now later, when I found out how that works is their ability to learn language, as well as many other species that I've met since I've been with them. And one of them actually showed me how it was done. And every language has a tone, right? And the way those tones come through will signify something. And they're able to understand how that comes. I'm allergic to languages. So, for them to do that. And then one of them tested me with it when I asked her, and I was able to understand what it is, what she was saying. And it's not as though you get a picture of it rather than just the sound when one of them speak. So they were able to adapt to the English language in no time, as they do any language.
So going along with that idea of different languages, did you get the feeling there was any kind of psychic component to that process? What we would consider as the psychic component?
I'm not sure. I met this, I kind of name my characters, because there's no name or word for them in a way. And none of them that I've met really fit, other than one group of people, fit any of the descriptions that we have on Earth of aliens. And I never can remember the name of it. The Aqua people, that movie.
Avatar?
Navi.
Yeah, the Avatar. Neva. Is it Neva?
Not Navi.
Navi. Okay. There's this one species that I met, what I call the Navi, because they were so similar in the facial shape, how their nose comes straight up basically and then out, unlike ours, how it comes into a triangle. And she just had those characteristics. And her eyes were very big too, like the Plejarens. And we were having a long discussion while I was waiting on Sam Jess to do some stuff that she had to do with the people. And so we're sitting there and I asked her because she was speaking English to me, right? And it's like, how do you do this? And I was always curious about that and just hadn't had the opportunity to ask anyone before. And she explained to me that, like there's a rhythm and I don't know, she used some other words, but tones, the way things are said in a series it translates into a language. All the languages, even other type species, have the same thing that happens. And I don't know what that means, from the head to the mouth. But so she said, let me show you. And so she said, I'm going to speak to you in my language. And she held my hands and she spoke to me. And when she was finished, she said, tell me what I said. And I says, you're happy to be here with me. I just knew it from listening to her and paying attention to the sound. It was like, instead of listening to somebody talk, you're listening to a music, some music where you don't really connect with the brain and you're not trying to figure anything out. And when she said that, I just could tell that's what it was she said. And she said, yes, I was right.
You've written 5 books in less than a year, or about a year, something like that. So you've gone quite a while getting to know these people. And they're called the Plejarens, and that's Plejarens. And there's 6 on the ship, and that's a lab ship. It's not a cruise ship that goes out into the universes, or
It was a lab ship, and it's kind of funny how it came to be. They don't do contact, but it was Sam Jess because Sam Jess had a lot of authority, and so she actually got on the ship. She was almost a stowaway. She was just trying to escape to avoid her destiny. And in that process, they were all kind of separate. They were all like excellent in the fields that they worked, which was multiple fields, mostly about science. And but she wasn't one of them, but she was on the ship kind of get away. And the captain actually took the job to captain that ship, which was a large step down in a lot of ways, because he was basically an admiral, or on the point of being an admiral, what we would call, and he can control fleets and all these different types of vehicles and things like that. And so they're all a bunch of misfits. And their command basically told them, well, why go ahead and see what you can learn from this individual, because their impression of us was that we were very violent. We were kind of like monsters, and don't involve yourself with them. And so that was left to another special group that was trained in order to do certain things, which is a whole nother story. But so in this essence, they just wanted to see how things worked. And we kind of grew together. They're so similar to us and everything. But there was one problem that we had, and that was I was explaining certain things and situations to them and how we view that. And they would ask me questions related to that. And for instance, there was one question that I posed was a guy walking down the street without a shirt. Okay, so they took that, and 16 hours later, they were on the edge of their seats and continued to ask me questions about it. And what I realized is that when they see things, they see it from so many different points of view. So as if that happened one day, that they were, here on Earth, and they were on a street and they saw a guy without a shirt, they would understand the whole purpose behind that, what it meant and everything. And so that kind of tired me. Then I had to introduce like movies to them. And that's what really broke everything loose. Was then when they would watch a movie, then they had qualified questions that they could ask me, rather than every specific tiny little detail. They could kind of understand what we do and how we think. And so anyways, we had that breakthrough, and we just sort of grew together. And then there was this one point at which the command wanted me to go to them, the command, rather than with the people that I had met. And it was kind of funny watching how all these misfits, these people all on their own little mission sort of thing came together because they didn't like that idea. And then Sam Jess kind of wielded some of the power that she had, and we just actually became a family at that point. Because I said, they asked me, what do I want to do? And I said, I really don't care to do that. I'd rather just hang out with you guys if that's the case. And so that's what brought them all together. And from that point, we really grew a lot because the trust came in both ways. And I was actually going through a process that was extremely difficult. And that was I had to, what I call becoming naked. And that means you cannot, hide anything. You can't lie about anything. You have to, if they're asked a question about something, you have to explain it. And there were several times that challenged me because I was afraid that if I told them certain things about my life, they would know that I was a monster and they would know that I was violent and, so on and so forth. And I kind of figured that would be my last day. Several times that came up, but now I've gotten to a point where it's stress-free being able to live in an environment that where you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to have a face for every person that you meet. You don't have to have a story for each person you meet, that sort of thing like we do here on Earth. It's the only way that we can function.
Were you afraid that they were going to eat you if you weren't naked?
It's an ongoing joke, about that sort of thing with us. It's kind of funny, their humor. They really didn't have a whole lot of humor. The people that I met, the way the captain has described it to me, or like they don't have militaries, they don't need militaries, but they have like a structure of order. And these are like a lab ship would be addressed to like a government ship or whatever you want to call it. And so there was, a uniform in a way like our military. How a military has, a certain uniform and they have, haircuts and so on and so forth. And so the people that I was meeting was that type of person. And I didn't know for quite some time. And I read it through the books where until we went to one of the colonies, I did not understand that these people were different than the regular people of their species.
Oh, where are they? Are they in our universe? Are they close? Are they far?
Yeah, a lot of people, would consider them Pleiades, the race that these people are, but that's not true at all because they're not in the Pleiades. You go to the Pleiades, and then the best way to describe it, because it's kind of like defining something in the ocean when somebody asks me where something is. And so you would go to the Pleiades, and then you go through the Pleiades, and then about another 80 light years, and you would run into the Plejaren planet and system.
They actually have a planet that they call their own, or a solar system they call their own, or and there's other beings in that civilization, or is it just Plejarens?
Well, in that particular place, it's just Plejaren people, kind of like us in our system. And the planet's mainly a water planet. And it's kind of like a planet of the Philippines. Everything's islands, and there's just a couple of the larger type islands. But in the beginning, they were similar to us too, where they were, they had continents. Where now, over periods of millions of years, it's turned into like one great big Philippines where there's islands everywhere. And it's real similar. And as like when I'm there, I feel light. I don't feel heavy. So I know the gravity is different, but I have no problem breathing. Actually, I breathe better. And so, but that's the only real difference that I see in that sense.
So their technology has to be so far ahead of us. I mean, where did they get their energy? What do they eat? How do they live?
Well, I guess the best way to answer that would be go back to how they're conceived to begin with. For the most part, they don't have any sex or anything, and only as a tribal sort of a cultural thing that they will do from ancestry. So they don't have parents like we biological the way we think of it. They are biological, obviously. They the female is inseminated, or there's multiple ways, but long story short, a female will, take the eggs until it's like 3 days later when it's actually created a being, right? It's not any different, really much different than what we are, in the process. It's when the cells are arranged in such a way that it's going to be an actual baby, and then they're removed. So 3 days after the insemination and that is taken, they take those out. And the language is very difficult to translate in a way. I'm not talking about their verbal language, but our descriptions of what communicate to what they are. Like I would say test tubes, right? The cells are put into a test tube. It's not a test tube, okay? But it's something similar to that. It's the best way, the only way I know how to describe it. And they receive tones while they're in there, while this is all taking place, and which leads to a whole nother thing about the cells and natural law and those sort of things. So as they're in there, they are fed different types of tones and at different times, and they're of course they're fed in however it is that they continue to give it nutrition. And also light is a therapy that's used on this thing. The only thing that they will alter about the baby, or whatever you want to call it, and it's in its most infant stage. So I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess it would be at the very beginning, where if there's a problem in their DNA that would cause them to be not what you would call a regular DNA strand. In other words, if there's issues with something that would cause them to be different, then they'll correct that. But they don't modify it for the purpose of making the being different, other than removing any abnormalities that would be associated with it. Once they reach a certain point, which is I cannot tell because I can't guess at it, but like 1 or 2 or 2 years old at the most. I think it's a lot less than that, probably more like a year or a little over a year, as they've been formed right into like a baby. They're removed from that, and then what happens is they'll have sets of parents for certain periods of time, and those people will volunteer to do that work. And so in that process, what they do is they guide the child. This is what's called natural law, and it works. They'll give for instance, in the simplest terms, they'll give the kid toys, right? And the things that they'll gravitate to is the things that they will continue to give to them, more advanced as it goes, right? As they're growing, and they'll find the certain things that they really like to do. What happens is like here on Earth, when we are growing up, and our parents will guide us, and we're becoming programmed in a sense, and as we get older, they might suggest maybe you should go into this field or this field because it's got promising things happening and it's going to be here for a while and such. And what happens is as our technology continues to grow or change, then that those types of jobs become the ones that they had chosen aren't so good anymore, and everybody's moving into another field or different fields. And that's because that we're following a program. We're not following the natural way, where in their world, as these kids develop and they're being given and encouraged to do the things that they see most interest in, the natural law is because that's what kind of guided them, not anybody else, but that etheric knowledge of what they needed to do and that they would love it. And so they don't really necessarily go to schooling or have schools or anything like that. They are all self-taught. And in that process, they are addicted to it because they only sleep about 2 times 20 minutes. I call it sleep, but it's more like meditation. And then in that time, they love what they do and they work all the time. It's kind of like if you had a game that you just absolutely loved and it kept evolving and evolving, and they continue with that and they work with others because there is no monetary system. So people do what it is that they truly believe in or want to do. And that covers a whole range of different things.
In talking about Plejaren children, basically, uh, what have you been able to see in terms of the range of children and what they sort of represent to you in terms of their society? In other words, we learn about community as humans from our parents and from the people around us. And I'm kind of curious about what is the nature. Is there something that's different about how Plejarens children are brought into existence that sort of innately has a community or a society sort of built into them? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's really not any different than ours, but their environment, meaning the way they grow and the way what they know and things like that from living, in their society, they gravitate to certain individuals. And like, for instance, there's a couple that I named on the ship, Hans and Franz, and the reason I did that was because it was just comical. It reminded me of an old Saturday Night Live thing. Not that they're silly or stupid, but it was just the way they work together. And they hadn't known each other until they came together on a project. And, so what they were doing was, it was so similar. And the one guy kind of works on the outside of different projects, looking at patterns and things like that, where Hans was more specific about taking either technology that already existed and converting it into something that they needed to do, or so on and so forth. And they got to work together, so they got to know each other, and they were natural friends. And so that seems to be the way things work, is they're so involved in their work, they don't really necessarily, the people that I know, right, the ones that I first was introduced to, I'm not talking about the people like on the colonies or other places. They're so involved in what it is that they're doing, they really don't have social time. That is their social time. That is their enjoyment. And like, you have this thing I call it a social network, like kind of like you have Facebook or YouTube or something like that going on, right? Or TikTok, whatever it may be. It's not like that, but a social network. Theirs is, and they don't have internet. They don't need internet. They don't have like computers or screens, but they have similarity to that. So when I explain it, I'm going to use that kind of terminology. But what it is they'll have these like it's more like a journal, a medical journal, where you can go in and read papers of other doctors and stuff like that. And if they find something that's in the project that they're doing, something related to that can be useful to them, then they'll try to work with those individuals or add to whatever that individual had already made and show the differences in them. So people will kind of congregate in a social way related to those sort of things. Now that's just the people that, are, let's say, the government sort of employs. Now in the colonies and stuff, it's complete chaos. Everybody leans to what it is that they want to do. And there's these women that I called the tourist girls, because they almost look like they jumped out of the 70s. Here I am only having connection with these beings that are in these uniforms, and most of them blonde hair and so on and so forth. Then I get this culture shock where I meet actual Plejarens, the ones who have work that they do in other places. And these girls were more of entertainers, and they knew the social game really well. So we ended up using them in that fashion later on. But their kind of social network, like, they have different specialities, and theirs was entertainment. And one of them creates these tones where so much of this has got such a big storyline, but I'll give it the shortest I can and still try to do it justice. But she makes music that creates tones that you go out on this floor, and like dancing has just been, I've been allergic to dancing, just like I've always been allergic to language, right? But they get me out there, and I think to them, oh man, this is going to be crazy because I'm horrible at this. And then all I've seen so far is these people that look like professional dancers, like the teen movies where everybody in the classroom is a professional dancer. But anyways, I'm out there, and what happens is these tones stimulate portions of your brain and your body in order to make you, so you're basically on automatic. So you're moving with the tones that are being that's coming out of these speakers or whatever you call them, and you feel the beauty of it. It's like listening to a classical song that you don't need to know the language or anything else, but how it makes you feel. And that's what she does. And so are these tourist girls do. So as far as, and see, that's the part of the social thing. Also, there are people who, for instance, their farming is automated, right? And in that farming process, there are people who still want to like get their hands dirty. It's not necessary, but they do that, and they grow their own foods and things like that. And then, of course, there's no monetary system, so they give it away. And then there's people, like the food is quite different. It's usually in these little gray balls, right? Which doesn't sound appetizing at all, but when you put it in your mouth, you know that you just bit into a steak, for instance, So there are people on the outside of that. So that's kind of like what you were asking, the social network. That's a short answer and a very big question. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Annie and let Annie ask some questions.
I'm very interested in their technology. I mean, you mentioned the metals, that they combine all these different metals and they stretch and they fall apart and they come back together, and kind of reminds me of the Roswell metal. And the pods, the cruisers. I mean, tell us as much as you can about their technology.
One time we were outside the ship. I was in one of their suits, which is a great story. But we were out in space, and Hans, he gets real excited about showing me things because he knows I'm interested, right, in different things. And so we're standing out in space, basically, floating. And he said he wanted to show me something, and he gave me a couple pieces of metal, and they were similar in appearance, but they were different metals. And he had me touch them, and when they touched them, they fused. And then I could also stretch them and stuff and make them move for a short period of time. And so basically what he was showing me is that when in space, you can take metals and they fuse together, they become one. It's not like they are welded together, they just melt together. So you can take multiple different types of metals or other types of properties and bring them together in space, where you cannot do that like with machinery or anything here on Earth. So there's an advantage. So in other words, if you think about it, they can kind of like mold whatever shape they want for whatever purpose.
And what about that little canister you were writing about, that Hans or one of the guys, you put it outside the ship and that's how they get the energy? I mean, that was amazing.
In a way, it was very, what he was showing me was something that was very on the low scale. He knows that I'm Homer in space. And so he kind of treats me that way. And, but I'm glad that he does, and so basically he was showing me something that we have technology for on Earth, which he doesn't quite understand. We discovered this years ago at the same time we had solar, or discovered solar and how those properties work. And, solar is dirty. A lot of people don't understand. Solar is dirty. Electric cars are very dirty, toxic to our environment and stuff. But what I'm getting at is that he had a canister, kind of like one of those vacuum tubes you put in a bank, and it sucks up and goes, and it kind of reminded me of that. And he takes this thing, and I don't know what it is that's on the inside, but basically when the way he showed me was kind of comical. He goes, I gotta show you something, and so, he takes me down, he's all excited, and we go down to the bay, and he throws this out the door, this canister, and it just kind of like, it follows the ship, and it's right outside the door, and he's all excited, and I'm like, and you want me to see what, like, you didn't tell me what this is all about. And so, then he gets around to telling me that this canister is collecting light, and that you can, even in the darkest places of space, there's light. And so it just takes a little longer. In this sense, we were near a solar system, a sun and all that, and it was able to collect, I think it was like 15 minutes. It collected what it needed to, or filled the canister with light. And I don't know what the properties are on the inside, but we do have those. And so we were able to duplicate this. And anyways, they brought it in once he felt it was full. And then we went back up to his place is where he works, and he added vacuum and pressurized it. And so this canister that was, like a bank canister, now was more like the bottom of I guess a small coffee can or whatever. Kind of like the battery that you use on power tools. Okay, it was kind of like that size, and it was just solid. There was no anything to it other than this solid mass. And so he handed it to me, and he was all excited again. And it's like, and this is for what? Sort of thing. And he goes, look at your phone. And I pull out my phone, and it's charging. And so essentially this little slab of it reminded me of like PVC pipe, and that was sealed on both ends. And he says like a warehouse, which there's another story behind that, like a Petsco, let's say. All the power that thing uses, this thing, you can put this thing in there and replace all the electricity. There's no wires or nothing, just this one little thing. Everything in that place will charge and run, the air conditioners, the whole works, for about 9.5 years until it's depleted, and completely free. It is not interrupted by like lightning storms or anything like that. There's no disconnect to it in a sense. Also, whatever's traveling through the air has no effect on the human body.
These canisters, these vacuum things that collect the light and make energy, is that how they power their ships, their cruisers, their pods?
I don't think it's like the main energy source. I'm not quite sure exactly what that is yet, other than they use coils. But they when I was on one of the colonies, and they were showing me how things work and all that. And one of the things that we did was they showed me like on the outside where they have thousands of these just everywhere, right? There's got to be more. Thousands is not enough. There's probably 1 million of these little collectors that constantly collect, and then they're automated to vacuum, and then they have that power to power things that's within the colony. And just to give you an idea, in a short version, it's a big cylinder basically in space. It's hollow in the center, and it's massive, right? And they put it in like orbits of particular areas where there's a sun and everything, so you get a lot of the same stuff that you would as a planet, from the sun and all that good thing. And in these colonies, it's like curved. Like if you're standing in one place and you look down, you can see that it appears very curved. Like when we're walking on the street in a straight line, and you don't really see a hump, except for in certain places where you're in the middle of nowhere or something, you can kind of see it disappears at distance. Where in here, you can always see that it's curved. But they have everything in there that they have, like, they have work, and they have everything that you would imagine in a city, right? But this is a massive, massive city. And on the ends, it's like clear, but that's a whole nother discussion. But they're not. It looks as though there's nothing there, but there is. And so they are able to collect sunlight and things like that due to they put it in orbit, so to speak. So it acts a lot like a planet. Now, in relation to the power, it has, I don't know the exact prescription for describing that, but in a sense, one of my experiences was I got to ride in one of these, like they call them Tic Tacs, and it's actually a pod, right? And to me, it reminded me of like a big coffin, getting in it and stuff. And you have this like perfectly smooth metal coffin, right? And by touching in a certain place, what you'll see is like a line develop, a long rectangular line, and that's the hatch, and it opens up. And so once you're inside and that hatch closes, then it forms again. So it's a solid body. And so I don't know how that works exactly, except for that it does. And I got a ride in one, and then there was a whole adventure associated with that. But I got to the point where it's like, I want to do this, and so I want to fly one of them. And so when I first rode in one, I could see Sam just moving her hands, and there's nothing there. There's no console. There's no lights. There's no anything there. And I would see how she would move hands, and the pod would would do things, right? And so in that process, what they did for me was put in, like, it was like a light dashboard, and there was like a joystick, and it was weird because, like, it would react to the joystick. I could fly it by using this joystick, but this joystick was made of light. And so when I'd put my hand on it, I couldn't feel anything. But when I would make motions, as I would if it was a joystick, then the pod would react to that. And then skipping ahead, there was like other places, like when you would jump from one place to another, there would be like a button. And so I was to think of in my head about what was happening. Like, I want to jump. Okay. And then I would push the button. Well, it got to a point where they removed all that. So now they just told me to do as if there was this dashboard there. And what I learned was that's what, like, Sam Jess was doing when I watched her, is just making the motions and knowing what it is that you wanted to do, then it would react to that. And then further, like Hans explained to me, like, your frequency is kind of like everything. It's like your passport in the galaxy, whatever your individual frequency is, because each one of us has a different, unique frequency. And so I call it PI because it's not AI. So it's like personal intelligence. This pod will recognize me when I get into the pod and I'm piloting, then it knows me. And it's as though there's a living being that surrounds the ship. And the best way I can describe it is like when you see these pictures of UFOs and stuff, and you'll see like a fuzzy area around them. I've always called that like the plasma, anyway, that's what it is. It's like it becomes a living being around you. So when you take these actions and you think of certain things, like, I'm at the moon and I want to go to Mars. Well, it'll take me in that proximity if that's what I choose, or a direct point when I say jump or make that motion, and it's instantaneous. And what it does is it knows, like, in advance of what I am asking it to do. So if I want to go to this proximity of Mars, say, it will know if there's something there that I don't need to be a part of. In other words, if there's a particle or something and that I would be showing up in that space that would destroy everything, it knows that. And it would alter whatever necessary for me to be safe. And it knows prior to, because it has my frequency, it knows prior to what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, how I would react in certain situations, and it makes any corrections necessary for that.
Is it reading your mind?
The other question with that would be, is there also, in addition to reading your mind, is natural law a part of this process that you're experiencing with with piloting the pods?
I don't know if specifically that it's natural law, but I know that everything related to the way they do and conduct things is related to natural law. That's why there isn't any wars or anything that, like the movies kind of show us and everything. So no, yes and no on that subject. And what was the other part of the question?
Where do you go? You were saying if you wanted to go to Mars, you can really go to Mars and go to the moon or to other planets. Is that the jump?
That's where I need to explain what jumping is. And, there's, if you hear, scientists talk about they go into a wormhole and so on and so forth. Well, that's not the purpose of wormholes or reasons why. But what they do is, like I was telling you, your passport to the galaxy or universe is your frequency. And so say, like, now we have this, I call it cruise ship, which is very similar to the size of the colony, although you could fit it inside, I guess. Anyways, it's massive ship. And so everything's based on, like, the pod is like the very introduction to everything, right? But now on a ship's, they all work the same in this matter of jumping. What it is that they want a particular place to go. And to do that, what they do is they find frequency in that area that they want to go to. And in that frequency, certain ingredients that is in the soup that's there are things that matter. And those things that matter, they will find or identify that exact frequency, and it will know in an instant what if that changes and how to adapt to it. And then say the captain's on the ship, and within seconds he knows, okay, they've got the frequency where they want to go, and then instantly the ship becomes that frequency because it is a unique frequency, so it's a point in space. And next thing you know, when they become that frequency, they're a part of that frequency, which is jumping. So they don't need warp speed. They don't need any of that. They can just be in one place and appear in the next place in an instant.